And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And as always, I am your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Football Friday. We have a lot to talk about on today's show. We got both shows today. We got the Football Podcast from 11 to 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Then I do the Patreon shortly after that. And then I will be streaming the Baseball Podcast shortly after that, around 12:45 p.m. Eastern Time. So, got the double show today, so hopefully you guys tune in to both. Before I get into the rundown for today's show, I just want to remind you guys to donate or tip and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show. And for bonus coverage materials that are not covered by this live broadcast, make sure to go to patreon.com and search up GSMC Sports Network, and that is where you can find all the exclusive content across all the platforms here on the GSMC Sports Network. And yeah, with the donations and the tips, it's good because obviously, when you have a lot of people in the chat and you want your comment to be read, over the live broadcast, when you do that, it's a super chat, and for me, then I highlight that and I make sure to talk about that on the live show. So that's why, if you really want your comment to be recognized on the stream, that's how you can do that. And obviously, the link is on the bottom of the ticker here, streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. So, with that, let's get right into what we are going to discuss on today's show. So, to start off the show, we are going to recap last night's game between the Jaguars and the Saints. It actually turned out to be a very good game, so we'll get into that in a second. Then we will preview all the early window games for Sunday, so that'll be the second part of the show. The third part of the show, we'll do the late window games. We'll preview them, and then we'll preview probably the best game of the weekend, which is the Sunday night game. And obviously, we didn't the Sunday night game this past week. Well, last week, if now you want to say that, wasn't the best. This will make up for it. You'll have another NFC East team versus another AFC East team. This time it'll be the Philadelphia Eagles and the Miami Dolphins, a pair of 5-1 teams. So we'll preview that in the final part of the show. So a lot to talk about. We'll do picks and things like that. So let's get right into it. So let's recap last night's game between the Jaguars and the Saints. So I said this was going to be a low-scoring game. I said the Jaguars would win this game. And the Jags ended up winning, but this ended up being a very high-scoring game. The Jags, they looked like they were on their way to dominating this game. But the Saints, at one point, they tied the game. And, the Saints offense definitely has a lot of problems. And definitely watching the game up close last night, you could really tell that. Derek Carr got banged up in this game. It looked like it was a groin injury. So it didn't look like he was going to finish the game, but he's a tough player, and he was able to finish off the game. But the Saints ultimately fell to the Jags 31-24. So we'll go through the game summary. So the Jags right off the bat, 10 plays, 75 yards, almost 5.5 minutes, go right down the field and score a touchdown. Travis Etienne got the game started off with his first touchdown of the game. Saints went down the field, 11 plays, 43 yards, and they missed a field goal. Then the Jags fumbled, but the Saints weren't able to capitalize on that, so they ended up punting. Then they came back with a field goal of their own. So the game was 7-3, and then the Jags, 7 plays, 75 yards to go up 14-3. Another touchdown by Travis Etienne, 17 yards out. Then the Saints, they got the ball back, turnover on downs. Jags punted, Saints punted, Jags punted. Then the Saints kicked a field goal. Then the Jags kicked a field goal. So at the half, it was 17-6. So yeah, it just looked like, the Jags were going to pretty much dominate this game. And, so then we went into the second half. The Saints came out 11 plays, 52 yards, um, a little over 5 minutes on their possession. They kicked a field goal, so they got it within one score. Jags punted, Saints got the ball back, and you thought, okay, all right, let's see what happens. And then Derek Carr threw a pick six to Aluakon, and so then it ended up being 24-9 at that point. But then the Saints got the ball back, 16 plays, 75 yards, almost 7.5 minutes. They went down the field, scored a touchdown, and that was Taysom Hill, a 1-yard rush, and that was actually on 4th and goal. So, obviously he continues to be that gadget player for the Saints. Then in the fourth quarter, both teams punted, Jags turnover on downs, and then the Saints ended up tying the game, 3 plays, 53 yards. Yeah, it was a 17-yard play, a 17-yard pass to Michael Thomas, and then a 19-yard reception by 19-yard pass from Derek Carr to Taysom Hill, and then Derek Carr, 17-yard touchdown to Michael Thomas. So he scored his first touchdown of the season, and then Alvin Kamara got the 2-point conversion. There was a tie game. Then both teams punted, and then the Jags, 2 plays, 46 yards. They got a touchdown, Trevor Lawrence to Christian Kirk for 44 yards. And, the Saints turnover on downs. They had a chance to tie the game. Derek Carr threw a pass to Foster Moreau in the back of the end zone, and he didn't catch it. He could have caught it. So then the next play was to Olave, and he didn't catch it on 4th and goal, and that was it. And the Jags end up winning, and Foster Moreau on the bench just, had his hands over his face with his head down. I mean, he just was, so devastated that he didn't make that catch. And they showed Juwan Johnson and Kamara kind of being there for him to try to, cheer him up because, that could have tied the game. That could have sent it to overtime. But yeah, I mean, the Saints in the second half, 15 points in the fourth quarter. They had their opportunities, but and the pick six kind of killed them too. You take that away, that's 7 points off the board. But yeah, so Jags end up winning. They improved to 5-2. It's their best start since I saw it on Instagram. It was their best start since, let me see if I could pull it up. I forget what Instagram page posted it. But yeah, it's their best start in years at 5-2. And yeah, they've taken a hold on this division now. They look really good. Again, it was rough at some points during the game. Obviously, they allowed the Saints to come back into the game and tie it, but ultimately the better team won. Trevor Lawrence didn't have his best game, 20-29, 204 yards, a touchdown, no interceptions. Also was their leading rusher with 59 yards. Travis Etienne had 2 touchdowns in this game. He rushed for 53 yards. He looks like one of the best running backs in the NFL right now. So, yeah, he had another good game. Christian Kirk was their leading receiver, 6 receptions for 90 yards and a touchdown. Evan Ingram had 5 for 45. Calvin Ridley only had 1 catch for 5 yards. So he's been a disappointment so far this year. I mean, after that first game against the Colts, he looked like he was going to have a monster year, but right now it hasn't looked like that. Then on the Saints side of things, Derek Carr, 33 of 55, again throwing the ball way too many times. 301 yards passing, 1 touchdown and a pick. Obviously, that was the pick 6. Alvin Kamara, I mean, he was really involved in this offense last night. He had 17 carries for 62 yards, so he was their leading rusher. Also was their leading receiver. He was targeted 14 times. He had 12 receptions for 91 yards. Yeah, and a lot of the plays were just checkdowns to Kamara. The Saints, they don't look that good right now. Olave, 7 receptions for 57 yards. Taysom Hill had 4 for 50. Michael Thomas, 3 for 42 and a touchdown. But yeah, watching that game last night, you really saw what, the problems of the Saints up close. I mean, their defense is good but not great. Gave up big plays. I mean, the play to Christian Kirk, he took that to the house. That was basically most of him. I mean, Trevor Lawrence threw him a 10-yard pass or whatever it was, and he just, voided all of the all the Saints players and took it to the house. Um, that wasn't a good that wasn't good by the Saints defense. And yeah, I mean they let ETN have the first two touchdown drives. Um, you know, Saints defense just doesn't look good. Their offense doesn't look good. I mean, again, Derek Carr throwing the ball 50 plus times. The offensive line didn't really do him any help either, and I talked about that going into the game. Yeah, it just wasn't a good game for the Saints. I mean, they did come back, but ultimately they just couldn't get it done, and they fall to 3-4 now. And yeah, I mean, listen, and again, most of their plays was just checking it down to Kamara. Like they really could not get anything going earlier in this game. And I mean, the pick six, I mean, that was bad. And Derek Carr he's still trying to work on, his chemistry with his receivers, because there was a couple times with like Olave, they weren't on the same page. Michael Thomas really didn't do anything until like the second half. Yeah, the Saints just right now, they don't look very good on both sides of the ball. And, a lot of people look at the coach, and I would agree. I mean, I think Dennis Allen, depending on what happens this year with the Saints, I think they might have to go in a different direction with the head coach. Because you look at the talent. I mean, the talent's everywhere on offense and on defense. It's just right now they don't look very good. So we'll see what happens. But the Jags, they're finding their groove right now. Now they're 5-2. And I think especially when you look at the landscape of the South, the AFC South. Yeah, I mean the Jags, they've taken hold of this division, and it's ultimately going to be theirs. Now the Texans, I think right now are their number one competitor, but I think the Jags, they're going to take this division, especially Anthony Richardson now being out for the year, and you saw what the Jags did to the Colts with Gardner Minshew. I mean they don't play each other anymore this year. And then the Titans, with the injury to Tannehill, and they're 2-4. Right now, the biggest competitor in that division for them is the Texans. And then for the Saints, I mean, you still got a chance to win the division, or get a wild card. By no means this loss knocks them out of anything, but they're still trying to figure it out. I mean, and I think Derek Carr, I mean, throwing the ball 55 times is a little too much, and I think they got to pull back on that a little bit. But then again, they were down a lot during this game too. So obviously they got to throw the ball more. Defense needs to also play better too. So, but yeah, I mean that's pretty much it when it comes to this topic. Again, Jags look like a very good team right now. The Saints, I mean, again, they got some things they got to work out, and again, Derek Carr got banged up in this game, so we'll see what that means moving forward. I mean, he was able to finish the game, so I'm sure he should be able to play whenever the Saints next game. I don't know if they have a bye week yet. No, they don't have a bye week yet. They have a bye week in a couple of weeks. But yeah, so that's pretty much it with this topic. So with that, we are going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we are going to preview the early window games for Sunday. So I'll go through all of them, and that'll be our second topic for the day. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.